I feel like I always knew I would go to South Africa. It didn't really come alive or feel real until I was given the opportunity to take the step to actually do it.
I was prophesied to many times growing up as a child that I was going to go to Africa.
Was Africa everything you dreamed it would be? Yes? Yes, it was.
You get used to seeing what's on TV about Africa, and so you just take on this idea that the whole of Africa is like that.
I had in my expectations of everything being poverty, but when you get there, you see life, you see hope.
It was far more than I ever expected. It was a life-changing experience.
Everything about it was pretty amazing. The people were really amazing there.
It's just so vast and so varied and so different. You know, I don't think you can really be able to put it into words.
It was amazing. It was literally like living in a dream.
Just for a quick backstory of how this trip came to be, me and this team went to South Africa because of connections we have to some incredible ministries there that go into massive settlements to feed and care for the people living in extreme poverty. Our main goal for the trip was to simply help serve these ministries in any way possible and to give ourselves a bigger perspective on the world. For years, our own ministry had received words that we would one day bring teams back and forth to the nations, and this trip was the beginning of all those old words finally coming to pass. This was the first time leaving America for many of us, and the first time ever touching the soil of Africa. So on the first day, we made it to the airport for the long journey to Cape Town, South Africa. We had a couple ticketing issues at check-in with our youngest team member, Eli, but eventually got it sorted out and then said our goodbyes before heading through security. We boarded the plane and then landed in Atlanta for a 2-hour layover. We waited for a while and then boarded the very long flight to Johannesburg. After 15 hours of sitting in restless sleep, we finally landed in the capital of South Africa. We immediately suffered culture shock in Johannesburg's airport because there was almost no organization and they were very understaffed. So understaffed that we didn't make it through security in time and we missed our last leg to Cape Town. We then had to buy more tickets for each of us because they wouldn't refund our money. After buying the tickets, we found out that our bags were not forwarded to our final destination and that we had to go out of security to check them in again. But since our next plane was leaving soon and we had already bought the tickets, we made the decision to leave them behind, get to Cape Town, and worry about them the next day. After landing in Cape Town late that evening, Pastor Brian and Raymond, the ministry leaders, met us at the airport to make sure we arrived safely with everything we needed. We then picked up our rental van and headed to our Airbnb where we were all ready to get some rest. And then the entire neighborhood's power shut off due to load shedding, which is when the government schedules power outages for certain areas when the grid supply cannot keep up with the demand. Needless to say, it was a very long day and a very long night. The next morning, we decided to dedicate the day to jet lag recovery and stocking up for the next couple weeks. When we woke up, we were able to better see the beautiful place we were staying in, which is not the typical African scenery you usually see in movies, but it was beautiful.
It's the circle of life, and it moves us all to despair and hope. The circle of life.
Thankfully, Johannesburg was able to deliver our bags to Cape Town, so we then headed back to the airport to pick them up. After grabbing all of our stuff, we went to the currency exchange station to get some South African rand. $1 is worth roughly 17 rand, so South Africa is a super cheap place for Americans. And just a little bit of money can go a really long way. After loading up on cash, we went back to the Airbnb and rested up, because the next day we would be going into Egoli, the informal settlement that Pastor Brian and his wife Glenda's ministry have been helping. This will be the first day of the trip we actually go into the settlements and experience the realities these people face every day. It's something you try to prepare yourself for, but seeing it in person is always a different story. Although we didn't witness much racial tension while in Cape Town, the residue of apartheid is still very evident today. Decades ago, the South African government legally separated the people in the country by race and skin color. Although apartheid ended in the 20th century, many groups of people still live in segregated shacks without basic needs like running water and other facilities. The government seems to have minimal sympathy for them, providing little aid and leaving independent organizations like Pastor Brian's ministry to carry the responsibility of taking care of them and offer whatever support they can to help these people. Despite these realities, the people of Egoli warmly welcomed us with smiling faces. We drove through the settlement and parked in the heart of the community where Pastor Brian's ministry is located. The ministry is called the Tekiah Foundation, and the ministry facility is called the Dream Center. Pastor Brian showed us what they've built so far and also what they want to finish building in the future once they get the funds to do so, including an enclosed sports area for the kids to play and learn sports, a clinic to provide medical aid for anyone unable to afford expensive hospital visits.
Once a year, we have a group of doctors coming from the States, and they come and have a week of like a health awareness week. And then we had about 400 people here the last time. So they're coming in January again.
A workshop to give the people a place to learn practical building and craftsmanship skills, a library where kids who can't afford school can come to learn how to read and write.
And then, the kids love coming into here and just sitting and reading, and we spend time with them, reading with them. So these are things that they didn't have in this community when we came in. So we just looked at all of the things that they don't have, and we just tried to
fill in the blanks, yeah.
To do something that, that will make their life better, rather than just coming in and doing things, having church. You can have church, but
and then their main buildings that they use for feeding, church services, and other community events. We then made it to the face of Egoli, where we were planning to help Pastor Brian and Glenda feed the community there. But after we arrived, a heated argument quickly manifested between a gang leader there and the pastors of Tekiah. Because the ministry had been stepping in to take care of the community, The people of Egoli were becoming less dependent on gangs to provide for their needs and more dependent on Tekiah. This gang leader didn't like that he was losing power and influence over the community, so he lashed out at Pastor Brian, telling him and us to leave.
When there's no electricity here, but he steals the electricity and then he sells it to them. So we're now teaching the people differently.
Yeah.
And so now he's now got a problem because the people are wising up to the fact that they don't have to listen to them anymore. So now he's coming up against us.
Yeah.
But look, at the end of the day,
That's what education does, though.
Yes.
Opens eyes.
For the sake of safety, we drove back to the Dream Center entrance and pointed all the hungry people there to pick up a meal. As we were feeding the people, one lady requested to share a message on camera involving the loss of her daughter. This was her message.
I just want to tell you today about teenage pregnancy. I've got a daughter. I already lost a daughter through teenage pregnancy. Give guidance to the kids to stop this thing. Learn kids at school how to protect them from boyfriends and stuff. As a mother and a father, learn to love your kids. Because if you don't get love inside, you will go seek love outside. Mothers, fathers, protect your kids of evil because the devil is outside. Thank you.
After feeding the people, we led the preschool children back to the Dream Center where they showed us some amazing songs they've been practicing. We then helped teach the kids some basic educational activities like reading, writing, and creative skills.
Staan voor ninja. Hey, kap jou flow met de chop chop bow. Oh, staan voor oikie. Vet gevoer en reg vir die boykie. Pa, staan voor petrol. My tank is vol en my wiele kan rol. Kom ons klank die alfabet. Elke ding van A tot Z. Kom ons klank die alfabet. Elke ding van A tot Z. Kom ons klank die alfabet.
After spending time with the kids, we had to send them back to the settlement, where many of them roamed the area unsupervised. Their parents are usually working to provide basic needs, or their parents are out of the picture altogether. Pastor Brian and Glenda then took us out of the community and into Muizenberg Bay. They explained how the people of Egoli live less than a mile from the coast, and yet many of them have never even seen the ocean. You immediately want to give them everything you have all at once, but the need becomes overwhelming as one settlement alone can hold thousands of people. So this was our first day as Americans experiencing the true extremes of South Africa. People so close together, yet living polar opposite lifestyles. After Muizenberg, we headed back to the Dream Center for worship and the final meal of the day. We helped serve the families the evening dinner and were able to meet some of the beautiful faces there in the community. Before going to Africa, I was hesitant to bring my camera because I wasn't sure if it would make anyone uncomfortable. But I was pleasantly surprised to find that almost everyone actually loved the camera and loved having their picture taken. After a very full and overwhelming day, we headed home to rest up for the next adventure. I honestly couldn't help but feel guilty though, knowing that as we went back to our secluded neighborhood for a clean shower and warm bed, many of the faces we met during the day would be going back to a small shack, sleeping in the dirt, exposed to the elements and dangers of the night.
There is a house built out of stone.
You live in America where people are just selfish.
These people are just so glad to have what they have, which is, we wouldn't even consider being blessed by what they consider to be blessed by.
We are actually a very greedy people, how much we have, and don't realize how blessed we are versus, what they have over there and how little they have, and they think they're blessed because their trust is completely in God.
We have everything handed to us. We don't lack for nothing. We have so many distractions in America. Everything that I was going to see in Africa, I knew I wouldn't be able to help but compare it to America.
We have so much handed to us that it's more of an attitude of entitlement and not hope. There, it's real hope, and it was lovely to see.
The next day, we woke up and drove back to the Dream Center to find a building full of women and children, all lined up for medical checkups at the Tekiah clinic. As the nurses came in to examine all the women that came, it was our job to entertain the children with toys and games. While the men played with the kids, the women went into the next building for their weekly ladies' meeting. This is the Dream Center's dedicated time each week to minister to the women in the community, strengthening them and praying for them for whatever circumstances they may be going through. As the sun began to set over the Dream Center, people gathered for a night of prayer. We had an amazing night worshiping God and praying for one another and the community. Some people even started walking in from off the streets, wanting to give up drugs for a life dedicated to Jesus. After a great service, we ended the night with some group pictures and then headed home. Little did we know we had stirred something up in the community that would soon manifest itself, just hours after everyone left. We slept in the next morning, resting up for another full day. Then we all got in the van and headed back to the Dream Center. When we arrived in the afternoon, Pastor Brian had informed us that the facility had been broken into and all their music equipment had been stolen during the night. Thankfully, they were able to track down who took it and get most of it back. Unfortunately, they had already melted down the copper in the wires to sell for money. But as upset as you think that would make somebody, the people of Tekiah remained calm. Pastor Brian said that the enemy simply wants to frustrate them, but that God has always provided for them and will continue to do so. After this, we took it easy for the next couple hours and tried to play soccer with the older kids. I tried my best to offer some challenge to them, but quickly realized that I was way out of my league. Later that night, other ministries and social organizations all came together at the Dream Center to share different dances and songs. We shared some of our contemporary worship songs with them and then sat back to admire their incredible voices.
You don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like to love.
At this point, the area was scheduled for a power outage, so all the teams then moved into the heart of the Dream Center, where everyone mixed their own creative styles with one another until the power came back on. Eventually, they broke out into some African dances, and even one of our team members, Elijah, joined the fun. After the power finally came back on, everyone headed inside to watch the dances each team had choreographed. After all the amazing performances, the team invited everyone up for one last dance. And of course, some of our American team members were not shy to accept the invitation. A little bit after all the dancing, Elijah had to show the boys of Egoli how to beatbox.
You might have beat. I must have.
You so fat.
Oh, whoa. Whoa.
No.
Get out of this circle.
P-F-A-T. That's cool. That's fat. That's cool.
You mean PH?
What did I say? I
You said
F.
PF.
P-H-A-T. That's fat.
It's not good.
No. Different spelling, different meaning.
So fat, bro. You so fat.
He's calling you cool. He's calling you cool. He doesn't even know it. That means cool.
Before we said goodbye for the night, the Tekiah people set out a table and served dinner to us and the other team leaders. It never ceases to amaze me that a people that literally live in the dark and go some days not knowing where their next meal will come from will go out of their way to serve others, to serve us who already have more than enough. They continually give everything they have, and they continually give thanks to God for every moment and for every breath. They are a true living example of selflessness, gratefulness, and the love of Christ.
The most endearing thing about the people in Africa is how affectionate they are. I feel like that's such a natural thing to them. You walk through the door, you walk on the street, and people smile at you and wave at you and hug you, and it's something that I'm proud to have felt because I want to be like that.
They're very warm and open and caring. They're just full of life and joy.
I love the fact that they have the ability to love more, it seems like, than most group of people I've ever met.
The thing I loved about just the people there is the love and just the givingness of their hearts, the true, genuine love of their hearts.
Everybody received you with excitement, with love. Anywhere we found ourselves in Africa, you were received with blessings and favor.
I think I love the way that they all just jump in and they're all family together.
The heart they have for real truth of who God is. It was just, the people is what makes Africa.
They are in a completely hopeless situation, but yet they're always friendly and open and so full of gratitude.
Their faith is really all that they have, so it makes sense as to why it's so strong.
Even though they came from a really hard place, and a lot of them went through a lot of, traumatic things and maybe still going through traumatic things, they were still happy and having a good time and living in the moment, which a lot of people don't do.
They ministered to me so much, alone just by being who they were.
I'm just so thankful that I was able to witness all of that.
On Saturday, we slept in late and then drove out deeper into the city to a tourist spot called Waterfront. And yes, I was a typical ignorant American, surprised to see all the nice tall buildings there. But once we made it into town, we explored the area to see if we could find some gifts to bring back to our friends and family in America.
This morning. Just repeat it. Greater works I will do. Greater works I will do. Because of what Jesus has already done. Because of what Jesus has already done.
On our final day with Pastor Brian and Glenda and all the people of the Dream Center, we had a great service in the morning. We prayed, danced, worshiped, and spent time with the people. And then they fed us again. And then after morning service, we went home and rested up for the next service a couple hours later.
Mine's like the skin, the red skin, it's like raw.
Are we going one? I have cream in the room that you need to put on it.
I've been putting moisturizer on it,
After resting, we came back to the Dream Center for another amazing night service. It was bittersweet because we had to say goodbye to all the people we had met as we moved on to the next ministry. So we got each other's numbers and plenty of group pictures so we would always remember one another. And then once again, they prepared an entire meal for us just so we wouldn't have to spend money on food for the night. As much as we tried to bless them and serve them, they would not stop blessing us and serving us. We ate as much as we could, talked with the pastors and leaders for a while, and then said our goodbyes before heading home. After the long week with Pastor Brian and Glenda's ministry, we wanted to rest another day before going to Pastor Raymond and Pam's ministry. So we did a bit of exploration and ventured out to a beautiful spot called Boulder Beach. It was extremely windy and there were wild South African penguins everywhere. It was definitely not the typical type of scenery you expect when you think of Africa, but it was beautiful nonetheless. The next day was our first day with Pastor Raymond and his wife Pam and their ministry. Our first event with them was at a building they rented for a ladies' meeting. They had women from all over the area there, and they gave some of the women in our team the opportunity to speak some words of encouragement to them.
See, the Word of God is alive and living. Yes. The Word of God is Christ Jesus.
We also had the privilege of listening to Pastor Raymond speak, as well as some of the other women there.
So Lynn would sleep at the fire at night. She would move from person to person and just sleep all over. They would steal her clothes. And last week she gave her heart to the Lord. Last week Tuesday.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm sitting here with a grateful heart. I lost like everything last year. And by the grace of God, I met Pastor Raymond and Sister Pam. And they both now from church. And I'm so grateful. I don't know how to repay them. I couldn't express my gratitude to Pastor Raymond and Sister Pam. But I just want to tell everybody sitting here, I love you with the love of the Lord.
Amen.
Because family.
Amen.
We were expecting to help serve the meal to all the women, but just like Pastor Brian's ministry, they insisted on serving us before serving anyone else. As wrong as it felt, we knew they were just being an example of the love of God, giving everything they have. So we sat and ate the delicious meal they had prepared before cleaning everything up to go. Of course, we couldn't leave before testing out the building's nice acoustics.
Kingdom come, your will be done, as it is in heaven.
Afterwards, Pastor Raymond showed us his working quarters where him and his team have devotion, do basic work, and prepare meals for the people in the poor communities. He then took us to one of those communities, a large informal settlement called Se Bos. Not only did we get to see the outlines of the settlement, but Pastor Raymond actually took us into some of these people's homes to see the living conditions of the community grounds.
Where you guys from?
America, Florida.
Kerntjies gaan nou kry die kerntjies.
As overwhelming as everything was, there was still a lot to see, so we had to keep moving with Pastor Raymond. We got to see the church they had built within the settlement, as well as the safe house they are still in the process of completing for feeding the people in the community who otherwise wouldn't have anywhere else to go for food.
So what we're going to do here is, we're going to, these kids that roam around, the kids that roam around, we want to get them into a safe place.
Because Se Bos is so densely packed, it's also often subject to terrible fires that destroy the homes and take the lives of the people living there. A year prior to our visit, a fire had swept through the settlement, leaving many of the people with nowhere to go. The government offered food services to the people for 3 days before leaving them to fend for themselves. Just a week before we came, another fire had started, destroying even more homes. Without government assistance, this makes ministries like Pastor Raymond's a crucial resource and lifeline to the people living there. Honestly, what else can they do other than trust God for their next meal, and sometimes even their next breath? Before heading home, Pastor Raymond drove us through the neighborhood where he grew up. He explained the different things he experienced growing up and how he used to be a completely different man, living a lifestyle similar to the people in the community. But he testified how God saved him, transformed him, and how he now works to bring the people in that same community into the abundant life he now experiences every day.
The saddest thing to see is little children under 5 years old running around in the settlements with no parental supervision, simply because the mother or parent or guardian has to work just for them to survive.
They just walk around all alone. You know, they could get kidnapped. Something horrible could happen to them. it's just like these little kids taking care of each other, and it's a crazy thing to see, and it doesn't make much sense, but it's like that's all they know. All they know is to take care of their little brother or their little sister.
Just the little small children walking around by themselves with nobody to look after them, and you know, that was the hardest part to me, was to see the small children without parents.
A lot of this isn't their fault. It's not like they decided not to go to work. It's that they can't sometimes get out of where they are. You know, dad's in prison, mom is trying to work, and if she doesn't work, they don't eat. And so she has to leave her kids at home by themselves in an area that is not safe.
The saddest thing was seeing the little ones who took care of themselves throughout the day while their mom or whoever took care of them had to work. The kids that will grab your hands and look up at you with their shining smiles and beautiful eyes and just say, "Will you be my mommy?" So that was a hard part as well.
I think the hardest part of the trip for me was every time I'd hold one of the kids or play with them or interact with them, it would break my heart because I knew I was going to have to say goodbye to them. I loved spending that time with them, but it was sad knowing their situation and not being able to stay with them and not being able to bring them with me. You just want to give everybody what they need, and you want to be able to supply every need that they have, and you can't.
You know, you want to take them all home and give them a good life to live, but you can't do that, you know.
They have no choice but to hope and believe that things can get better, because things have got to get better, or, you know, they're not going to survive.
People are just barely surviving, and, you know, to give one meal a day is just a miracle in itself.
They don't even have a plan. They don't even have a way of knowing what tomorrow's going to bring. It was just such an opposite side of the world that I had only ever seen on TV, and it was to such an extreme seeing it in person that it was a pretty good shock. I feel like God broke my heart for what broke his in those moments.
It's crazy and sad, and I don't know.
Wednesday was a pretty big day because not only did we get to serve a meal, but we got to help prepare the meal from scratch, which was especially exciting for our team member Sherry, who specializes in cooking for huge crowds. On average, Pastor Raymond feeds about 700 hungry people in the settlement. And the meal is cooked in giant pots that end up weighing roughly 300 to 400 pounds once all the food is added.
Get it done, we need about 4 strong guys to carry this pot.
But with everyone doing their part and Sherry doing most of the work, the preparation was actually a very smooth process I think we all enjoyed.
Jerusalema ikayalami ilonoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana.
Before heading to the settlement to feed the community, we headed to a preschool daycare center to bring some supplies and pray for the children and care workers there. When we arrived, Pastor Raymond was very warmly welcomed by the children. Once we had left the daycare center, we moved on to Se Bos. One thing that was amazing to see was Pastor Raymond always being greeted by droves of people everywhere he went. Just seeing how he is treated by other people and simply listening to the countless stories he would tell, it truly is evident how heavily involved he is in the community and in the lives of all the people there. It makes you wonder if he ever has time to sleep. Once it was dinner time, we all gathered at the safe house and watched as hundreds of people came out of the woodworks for possibly their only meal of the day. It was overwhelming to witness, but also extremely fulfilling to know we had a small part in feeding all the people there. Of course, this was our first day serving this many people. Pastor Raymond and his team do this on a constant basis. The next day, we were back in Se Bos again to help with other needs in the settlement. We handed out some clothes to the people there, while our team member Vicky painted some encouraging words on the walls of the safe house. Then we had the privilege of helping add to one of the homes of the residents there. Her name was Lynn, and we learned that her children were taken away from her after her house had burned down in a fire. Her kids would only be returned to her after she found a place to live, even if it was only a shack. Most of the shack was already built when we got there, but we were able to add some curtains, a better door lock, a carpet, and some mattresses. And as little as it may seem to us Americans, it was amazing to see how grateful and thankful Lynn was for everything she had and everything that was given to her.
I just want to say thank you, Pastor, to the people of America. Thank you very, very much for doing this for me and my children. And may God bless you and your family. Thank you.
Also, me, I want to say thank you for everything. I'm very excited. Thank you all. Love you.
We also got to hear from some of the other residents about their experiences living there.
Hi, Amo. Ik is Janine van Se Bos.
I'm Janine from
Ik bly nou hier. Ek sien 10 jaar.
I'm living here 10 years.
En om hier te bly is 'n struggle.
Just to live here is a struggle. Last year our place burned down.
Het was nie lekker geweest.
Wasn't
het alles
nice.
Verloor.
Lost everything.
Ons het weer baan toe nie.
Didn't know where to go.
Yes, that's how we met Pastor Raymond.
That's how we met Pastor Raymond.
His wife. And sometimes we feel like, oh, nothing is happening. What is going on?
Sometimes feel like nothing's happening. What's going on?
Sometimes there's nothing. There's no food to eat.
Sometimes there's no food to eat.
Sometimes you go and you need to ask God, nothing is happening. Wow. And Pastor Raymond is coming and saying, no, it's fine, I'm going to bring you something to eat. There's something to eat. And wat kan ek sê? Ek kan net dankie vir die Here sê.
I can just thank God.
I just want to say, we love Pastor Raymond with all our hearts. And yes, what can I say? Nothing more.
Amen.
After hearing some of their stories, we said our goodbyes to the people of Se Bos and headed to our next stop. We drove to another neighborhood that a woman named Claudia feeds on a regular basis. Her, along with some other amazing women, are connected to Pastor Raymond and Pam's ministry, and they serve with the same amount of love and compassion as they do. Before dinner time, we got to sit down with Claudia and some of the team there to hear a little bit of their story.
But it actually started out with a dream that I had. That I was standing in my place here, and I was surrounded by women. And they were standing with mattresses in their hands, all of them. And I was standing in the middle, and I woke up and I said, what is this? You're going to be busy with women's ministry. And I said, no, I want children. I can't work with women. I want children. You know, yes. And Holy Spirit stopped me in the road. You need to go knock on these ladies' doors. The ladies was just coming, you know, different corners, they were just coming. So we started out with 3 small pots, people came and that gave us opportunity to minister to those. And yeah, and the pot got bigger, and then pastor came, and then there was a huge pot. It's been a wonderful journey, especially with them, because it's all teamwork. And with teamwork, we've become a family, a close-knitted family, you know, and that is so wonderful, yeah.
Once dinner time came, the experience was very similar to Se Bos. Kids and people from all over started entering the gates. You didn't know where all these faces were coming from, but you could tell they all knew to come here for a meal they may not have been able to get otherwise.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me, and all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
There's a woman that stuck out to me. She had such strong faith when she would have to get up really early in the morning to go to work, and it'd be dark outside, and there'd be thugs and robbers, and she'd have to walk by them every morning. But she'd meet them on that corner, and she'd greet them with joy, and they'd greet her back in the same manner. And that was so moving to me.
The ones that stood out to me the most were the women. After we were able to speak life over them and encourage them, you see in the countenance of their faces change. And I think I loved that the most.
Isabella, I loved her, and I would love to bring her home. And then there's a few other little girls that I just fell in love with and wanted to bring home with me.
I really enjoyed Pastor Glenda. She was a fireball. I love her passion.
There was one man named Louis. He lost his wife and his 2 kids in a fire that destroyed their house at the same time. He came up under Pastor Raymond, and they were able to work in Louis' life and help him, and he was able to come beside them, and he helps them, and he is so passionate about God. And that stuck out to me, because in those kinds of situations, people would become angry at God and blame them, but he is fiercely serving the Lord.
The kids stood out to me more than anything because I'm a youth pastor, so, my heart's for the youth. Yeah, the love you see in their eyes and the desires to want more, it's really humbling.
On Friday, we finally ventured off to Table Mountain, one of the new 7 natural wonders of the world. Earlier in the week, it was either too windy or the mountain itself was on fire, but Friday ended up being the perfect day to experience it. So once we made it to the parking lot and paid for our tickets, we got in line to ride the cable car all the way to the top, and the views from the cable car alone were breathtaking. Once we made it to the top, the views were even more incredible. After walking around for a while, the clouds started to move in. the temperature and visibility dropped significantly as we pressed on towards the final edge, turning the epic views into a surreal experience. We had heard that some people actually get lost on top of the mountain during low visibility, so we eventually headed back to the cable car for the final ride down. We enjoyed the last stunning views of the evening and then went back home for the night. The next day, we drove out to a very unique place on the beach where we met the pastors and ministry leaders. They had blessed us so much throughout the trip, but they finally agreed to let us at least buy them a meal, though it was not much compared to the countless meals they had served us. This was pretty much the highlight of the day, as we didn't do anything else afterwards. But regardless, it was still a really interesting experience. We even got serenaded by the local guitarist.
Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you.
Sunday was the last day with Pastor Raymond's ministry and all the people connected with him. We started off the day driving to Ocean View, which is another area he helps besides Se Bos. We had an amazing Sunday morning service there, praying, singing, dancing, and getting to meet all the beautiful people and experience some of their culture. Before moving on, Pastor Raymond took us around the neighborhood and explained what had been happening in the area and what struggles some of the church members have been facing.
From some of the church family, we have youngsters, kids whose fathers have been killed. Some of them have children that have been killed. There's one, you must probably see them now. First the father was shot, and then the mother was a witness, and so she was shot, and now the grandmother raises the two kids.
After saying our goodbyes, Pastor Raymond took us to Cape Point to pray over the region from a vantage point. It was probably the most expansive view I've ever seen. There was really no way to capture the entire view on camera because it was so vast. Later in the afternoon, we headed back to the Airbnb to pack, because sadly, this would be our last day in South Africa, and our plane back to America was just a couple hours away. The last sunset we would see over the Cape Town horizon would be the most stunning. It was almost like God was saying goodbye after the amazing 2 weeks we had experienced. So we enjoyed the last view of the coast, said bye to our Airbnb, and then set out for the long flight home. Before moving forward, I just want to take a minute to say if you are like most people after seeing these incredible ministries and the amazing things they're doing and you want to be part of that, or at least help them in any way you can, there is a way. For every US dollar you give to these ministries, it is the equivalent of roughly 17 South African Rand. So what may be side change for you could be what keeps someone over there from going hungry. So if you want to support these ministries and what they're doing, please use the links in the description to help these people, because it really does go a long way.
Something that I want to see change is the lives of the young men and the children in the areas. I want them to grow a deeper understanding of who God is and what the kingdom is and their purpose in life, because a lot of them, they really walk with no purpose.
The kids that I met this first time, I'd love to see them in public schools and have more opportunities to walk in a little bit more confidence in the kingdom and their kingdom character, knowing who they are in Christ, which I saw a little bit of that change even before we left.
I would like to see the kids really getting into the aspect of knowing who they are and really going after God more versus, just getting by and just living that way because they have to. I'd like to see a breakthrough in their mentality that they can be more.
I do hope that some of these kids that we were speaking over and these youth that we were speaking over, and that they take it to heart and step up from where they are and start seeing past their circumstances.
I want to see that they've progressed and they've come further than they were before. That poor is a mentality and that their mindset can be changed, and then their circumstances will follow that. I expect to see that when I go back.
When I go back, I would love to see more people in the settlements raised up and helping Pastor Brian and Pastor Raymond run the facilities as a team that's working God's ministry together.
I would love for people to have real homes. I just want them to have something better and know that there's something better for them.
I really want them to grab onto a dream and run after that dream with God.
I want to see them grow in the Word. I want them to see them grow in the Lord, that when we come back, that they see themselves stronger in God.
I would love to see the fruition, the growth in the ministries. I expect to see testimonies and hear testimonies, so I would like to go back and just be able to see all that God is continuing to do.
When we made it to the airport, we dropped off our rental van, said our goodbyes to Pastor Raymond, and then headed to the gate for our first leg of the journey. We boarded the flight and 10 hours later landed in Europe, which was exciting because most of us had never been to Europe before, so we were able to touch 2 continents in one trip. After going through customs in Europe, we headed to our next gate. We had 2 more flights to go before we finally made it back home in America. After hours and hours of long flights and drives, we officially arrived home and we were warmly welcomed with gifts and surprises from our family, which was nice because at this point we were all exhausted. And as sad as it was to leave South Africa and all the beautiful people there, it was nice to finally be back home, safe and sound, with all of our families again.
I definitely feel like I'm a better person because I've been able to go there and meet the people of Africa.
It gave me a bigger heart for the people. I definitely want to travel more. I'd love being able to love on all the kids. I loved being able to serve food. I loved doing everything that we did there was right exactly what I wanted to be doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing all these people again, definitely.
If anything, I think just going and seeing the reality of the situations has changed me, especially when it comes to looking at the poor and people that need help because they're doing everything they can do.
That's something that is definitely changed my perspective, is to be more thankful. Brian and Glenda, they're doing amazing things, and Raymond and Pam, they're also doing amazing things. And I love just being a part of what they're doing. I just want to pour into, the kids and the families that are there.
I just always want to see the best for people, so I want to see the best for these people, whatever the best is. I guess what would change me is seeing these people and their life and their experiences change.
Before I went to Africa, my relationship with God was kind of at a standstill. I was pursuing Him. I was reading the Word. I was praying every day, preparing myself for Africa. But there was something I was lacking that I knew that I was going to receive in Africa. So I'm grateful that God comes through, and I'm grateful that God fulfills His promises.
This trip changed me in a way that it gave me new vision, new dreams, a new perspective of where God has taken me. I need to do more here in America. There's people here, just like people in Africa, that need to be loved on and appreciated. That aspect woke in me, and I don't want that to die.
My prayer life has been so much bolder, and it has been so much more regular. It actually helped me prepare myself to come back home more equipped, I think, and more passionate even about my own ministry and my everyday life where I live.
Pastor Raymond, Pastor Brian is just pouring into this community and making such a big impact and difference, and made me think about, well, we need to come home and do the same thing here.
I'm just trying to hold on to a dream. Out here lost and nothing's what it seems. I'm just trying to find where I belong. This must be the dark before the dawn. The place that you were born is not where you belong. Tell me, baby, what stops you from wearing a crown? I wanna be somebody, and I wanna go somewhere, back to life, baby. Back to life.